John to come in because he's going to introduce the broader points about the ramifications of a school on that site on the infrastructure of the area.
Yeah, start off with a few thank yous. Firstly, for coming along tonight on a very cool night. And secondly, to Terry, who has come on board since our last meeting, has been our chair for 2 years and tried his best to keep him under control. Doesn't always succeed, but that is very much appreciated. And Nigel, who's taken a close interest, is becoming ward councillor. And Len Duval, who's been a very, very engaged member of the London Assembly for this area and goes back a long way on the Avery Hill. With that having been said, over the last 10 years, the park, as I'm sure you all know, and I'm sure you go there a lot, has improved an awful lot. We've made a lot of improvements. The Mayor's Fund was a huge advantage. We were able to replace the railings on the Avery Hill Road, helped pay for the new cafe, the new games area, and more planting. There's a new outdoor gym, which is good. The circular path, I'm sure you'll all agree, has made it much, much more accessible for all sorts of people, for all sorts of activities. The terrace garden has been improved. It was neglected before, it's now got somewhere. Looks okay. And the cafe area and play area have been much improved this summer with the council's neighbourhood grant application. And a safe picnic area, which was Pat Greenwell's idea, has now been created. We've planted more than 600 trees and an emerging woodland on the south field. And all these improvements, the Friends group have been integral with the council working together to make those improvements. But of course, the jewel in the crown is the Winter Garden. And the Friends were bitterly disappointed when the lottery bid fell through and the university decided to withdraw from the whole mansion site, including the magnificent galleries, which not all of you perhaps will have seen. I certainly hadn't until 2 or 3 years ago, and I was blown away. And I was lucky enough to be able to show Clive Efford that recently, and he was blown away too, because he'd forgotten what it looked like. And I think if you can remind yourself of what it looks like, we'll do some guided tours later in the autumn when we can look around again. The disappointment of the lottery bid falling through turned to despair when the council failed to take a strategic grip of the whole site, and for 2 or 3 years just said it was a matter for the university, which, while strictly speaking was true, was an abdication of their responsibility for the strategic asset, historic asset that was on their patch. So we're playing catch-up, basically, and as Pat over there said, why have those two assets been divided? They shouldn't have been. But it's not too late. We've got much more engagement now. I was very, very pleased to hear the statement from Katrina Delaney and the council welcoming the Friends group, the group's active participation. It's the first time she's shown any indication whatever of that, not having involved us in anything up to now at all. I'm very grateful for Len Duval for having brokered the last 2 meetings we've had with the council, because all our efforts to get a meeting with the council have been rebuffed over a 5-year period. And my 11.5 feet size feet, and about 11 size 11, by having to stuck my foot in the door for 5 whole years to get any kind of take-up from the council in terms of, despite the fact we've got a 5,000 name petition, we really haven't had very much involvement or much, I won't say the gratitude, you don't really expect that, because we're all voluntary in our roles here. What are the problems if a school goes there? Well, I'll start off by saying that, go back at the Winter Garden, and we've heard about the Grange Heritage Trust and the problem it's had with the assets they've been given, and that just shows what happens when a trust is given assets without any sustainable, viable form of income. And this is a point we made to the council for 5 years. Where's the income coming from to run a Winter Garden? And you can get a dowry, but the dowries run out, and so where is that sustainable income? The Heritage Lottery Fund were adamant that it had to be linked with the magnificent galleries, turned into one, and there are 3 what are now considered secret passages from the historic mansion site into the Winter Garden. To each bit of the Winter Garden, each of the 3 parts, has a physical link which is currently blocked. And whatever is done, those 3 links must be made to increase the flexibility of that space, different sorts and sizes, and a variety of events that could go on there. That is an absolute must. The problem at the moment is that Harris Academy are saying they want the whole of that, those galleries. They consider they're buying them and that they're theirs. And so there's got to be a massive change of attitude on their part, and that's got to come out in the planning process. That's what it's one of our things we're completely dedicated towards doing. What would the school do if it was sited there? Well, the question is, we did meet the architect from the DFE, and it's clear that it was at that stage of being very early in his consideration and understanding of the site. For example, he hadn't at that site time fully understood that the main vehicle access to the park was through what he considered to be his site, and headed down towards the cafe, which we now know to be the main, the car park, which is the main car park for the park. He hadn't fully understood that that was going to be happening through his site. And we've heard what the chaos is at school going home time. You said 900 people, so they're talking 1,100. It's not 900, it's 1,100. How is that going to be managed in conjunction with parking for the park? And you could say already the Cranwood's parents use Avery Hill, they go through the West Lodge, and quite rightly, from their point of view, they use it as a bit of a taxi rank in there. Clearly, Harris Academy won't want Cranwood's cars coming in here, but how are they going to tell one from the other? And how are they going to tell a school picking up person from somebody who wants to use the park? I don't see how it's going to work, so we're looking with great interest to see what our friend Gary Herbert's going to come up with in the new year. But that's very high. I don't want to use that as a blocker for the school, necessarily, but I just want somebody to explain to me how that's going to work. How is it going to look? Schools normally come with railings. Every school I've seen has got fairly big railings, and normally about 2 metres high, often with fairly spiky things on top. This is supposed to be a heritage asset we've got here. How's it going to look with railings around it with big spikes on? It's not what I expect to see when I expect to go to a heritage asset, to see railings around it. And I'm not saying it will look like some kind of prison camp, it needn't look like that. We do need to look very closely at how that is going to look in heritage terms. I'm not saying it can't be done, but that's going to be a very important factor. What will the buildings look like? We all know that age of austerity and that, we need more school places. Yes, of course we do. But what's the fees paid for architects? And when the Conservative government came in, you might say quite rightly, they said not having any more £50 million purpose-built Crown Woods is going on. We're going to do it like Lego form, and it's about quarter of the price. That's fine as far as it goes, but do we really want a Lego-style building next to one of the most important heritage assets of the borough? I don't think so. That's going to have to be very, very carefully designed. It's going to be sympathetic. The current university buildings are actually incredibly well designed, and they do fit in very nicely. But what would a kind of a breeze block style or purpose-built, whatever the word, system-built building look like bang next to a winter garden? It's got to be sympathetic. When you add all those problems together with the school, you start saying, well, is this the best place for school at all? And I'll leave that question mark hovering over the audience, because I know my colleagues here don't want to go any further on that. And I think it is a question we need to bring out in the planning stage as to whether a school is the best solution to this. I was very interested in Clive's comments. I was deconstructing that and reading the language very carefully. I would say the word, I know it's a phrase, constructive ambiguity involved in that. He wanted a sixth form there. That's not going to happen. So does he want a school that's not a sixth form there? I think we need to be a bit more build up the constructive element to that and a bit less of the ambiguity. And I mean, he has come on board very strongly, more strong than he had before, and he's engaging with us, which is good. But I do think we need to have a clear steer from him as to whether does he think that school is appropriate, and does he think that questions I'm asking have been addressed and taken this forward. Now Nigel gave an example there, which the example I want to give is Horniman's Museum. Now I took, and Park, and I took my daughter there when she was about 11, that's 20 odd years ago, and a sadder looking place you've never seen. It was horrible, and the lovely old museum, Mr. Horniman's, I'm sure Gordon can give us a history there, but Mr. Horniman's did a great job, that was 100 years ago, but when I took my daughter there, it was a dump, there's no doubt, it was a dump. And at some stage, I think the Horniman's Trust decided to get a grip on that, and I don't know if any of you have been there more recently. It's absolutely magnificent. It's a fantastic example. I think we should stop. Can I just say at this stage, can we please stop talking about Kew Gardens? Avery Hill is not going to be Kew Gardens, it never was Kew Gardens, and it's not going to be Kew Gardens. Kew Gardens is not an example of what Avery Hill is ever going to look like, and there are not many lessons from Kew Gardens that we can learn, other than that, as Nigel says, ours is better. But it's not a template for what we're doing here. A better template is Elton Palace, in fact. I'd like to think what that would be as a boys' school, but unfortunately it went straight from the army without touching the sides and straight to its heritage, and amen to that, because it did an awful lot better than... there's more in Elton than people think. We haven't got enough confidence in ourselves. And look at Elton Palace those years ago, when that was a bit sad too. If I remember going there when Gordon will tell us again, I used to go there on my bicycle on Sunday afternoons. It was only up for 2 hours and nobody else was there. That was 20 years ago, just look at it now. What we need to do at Avery Hill is have a bit of ambition, a bit of belief in ourselves, and a bit more cooperation from those people in authority, interacting with us, the people who know the history, have got a love for that part, want their very best for it. Up to now, as I say, my foot has got sore trying to get through the door and to get any attention at all. That has got to change. And if Len can help us do that, Terry with his more emollient ways than mine can get us through that door, that's what we've got to do. And so I'm very grateful that you could come tonight.
You were there a few weeks ago, John. You were actually in the room.
I was actually in the room on a meeting that I've been seeking for a year and a half, and it was good. We had a satisfactory meeting, but we are making progress. I'd like to bring the BMX on through Terry, bring the BMX group in, because not only do we risk losing a very substantial multicultural enterprise with 25 staff from the site, which hasn't been mentioned yet, but with that enterprise might leave the borough as things stand. We might also lose a very important community asset, which is the BMX track. Before I sign off, I would very much like anyone with interest in the site to put your name down and join our committee. We do need fresh blood, we need as much blood as we can, and it's going to be quite hectic. It's been on a slow burn for about 5 years, but it's now going to start heating up, so we do need you to come forward at the end of the meeting and say, yes, I do want to be on the committee, with all sides reflected, including local residents who have got payment issues, and I have observed that last week or two closely. Get involved, do come along, because we need as many people as we can. So signing off, I do again pay tribute to Terry for his attention and so keep him under control, which is not easy, and Nigel for his input too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John.